My name is Scott McFarland. I'm the CEO of Western Sierra Medical Clinic, and first off, want to welcome you and thank you for all being here tonight. What a wonderful evening. Tonight we're going to celebrate two very special people, Dr. Bill and Christine Newsom. And tonight we want you to take the opportunity to share your stories. We have a number of speakers, and really going to have a nice dinner tonight and enjoy your evening.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to honor the Christine and Bill Newsom. They're amazing people, and I'm delighted that I had the opportunity to meet you when I first came here. It's fitting that we recognize you two as friends and colleagues, as community leaders, as gifted and dedicated physicians who've cared for our community for more than 35 years. Since I arrived almost 10 years ago, I enjoyed working with Chris and Bill. Unfortunately, I didn't have that long to work with Christine Newsom, but in the short time, I was impressed with her. I was impressed with her knowledge, her practice style, and her true passion for her patients. I learned from others that she'd always been a very strong advocate, not only for her patients, but for the health and wellness for this entire community. This was clear to me when we worked to transition her practice when she decided to retire. She spent hours and hours researching the best option for her patients so that they would be well cared for and that there would be a warm and safe handoff for them when she decided to turn her practice over. So for that and for our whole community, Christine, thank you very much for your dedication. When I first met Dr. Bill Newsom in 2006, it was when you came by my office to introduce himself as the director of the Cancer Center. I was impressed with his passion for his work and for his diligence in assuring that his work and the work of his staff became my passion. I quickly learned how serious he was when he stopped by now and then, which turned out to be every week, to make sure that I could see his passion. I also learned that he wanted to make sure I understood it, that I could see what he was working for and why it was so important for our community. As you know, Bill is very compassionate and a strong advocate for his patients. I once heard him say that he was taught the gift of gratitude from his patients. But I can tell you, he gave that gift back in so many ways. He took the time to listen, and I mean really listen to his patients and their families so that he and his team could provide the best care for them and as individuals. So his gift of time gave his patients the gift of dignity and perfect care. And we know that kind of compassion is what really is true healing. In my opinion, and in everyone's opinion of the medical staff, Bill is brilliant and a gifted physician. He is soft-spoken but incredibly persuasive, especially when it involves the care of his patients. He is humble, but he is a leader with a clear vision. He believed. He taught us first that we had to believe, and then we could see it. We could see what Bill was dreaming. He cared deeply. It bothered him to see patients who were dealing with cancer have to drive all the long distance for their care. So he envisioned something much better. He became the champion for change. His leadership helped others to see the blueprint of what we have now, the Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital Cancer Center. Without his vision and drive for excellence, we most certainly would not have what we have today, which is a highly rated, fully accredited cancer center. And you should know this is the first community cancer center in our entire greater Sacramento service area built on Bill's vision. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to stay, to make sure that we saw your vision and that we had the tools to carry it through. Thank you for what you gave our patients and our community. And thank you for what you taught us about what life was really about. So thank you so much to both of you.
I just want to say what an honor it is to be here tonight, to recognize these very special people. And it's quite a testimonial to see this room packed with all of you to recognize them. So when Cheryl first asked me if I would speak tonight a few months ago, I had this momentary sense of panic that I'm sure many of you would have when you're asked to speak in front of a large crowd. But then I knew very quickly that it would be easy to speak from the heart about these two very special people, and in particular this woman who has had such an impact on my life, as well as many of you and this community as a whole. So before I say a few words about Chris, I do want to say a couple things about Bill too. When I first moved, I was looking to move up here in 1999. I was living and working in San Francisco at the time, and one of my concerns, and I admit it, was that if I moved up here, I'd be moving up to the hills where fashion had no place. So I came to the hospital and I was given a tour. And lo and behold, the very first physician that I met was Bill Newsom, complete with his socks and Birkenstocks. Sorry, Bill. But within a few moments, he made me feel so warm and welcome that I could not imagine being anywhere else. And he could not have been a better ambassador for this community and the hospital, and for me at that time. And since that time, Bill, you have been an incredible colleague, continually uplifting and supportive, and your patients loving you for your compassion and expertise. And I want to thank you so much for all that you have done for us in the community and for bringing Chris here. So I first met Chris in 2000 when I moved up here. I met her actually right away, I think even before I had even started practice. And she was hosting the Medicine Women Dinner, which is a potluck, and Sarah knows. It's for us women in the medical community. We get together once in a while and socialize. And Chris was hosting it at her home. And she was incredibly gracious and kind and inviting to me. And within a year, we were practicing together in our own at Ridge Medical Group, where we literally shared an office for 4.5 years. And then we went on to have our own practice for 3 years after that, just the two of us with our nurse practitioner, where again, we literally shared an office, our desks, feet away, I think 2 feet apart for that period of time. During that time, Chris was not only a business partner, but she was a mentor and a friend. And for those of you, many of you know this, that Chris is a brilliant clinician. But just as importantly, or even more importantly, she has compassion and empathy, and she can connect with everyone that she meets at such a level that they feel 100% cared for. And it was that combination, that exceptional combination, that has made her one of the best physicians that I've ever known, and certainly set a standard for me to strive for. And during that time, I was building my practice and learning how to be a doctor myself, and she continually took the time to answer all of my questions and give me all of the support that I needed. And when Chris was retiring and some of her patients had asked to move into my practice as a close second, it was the biggest compliment that I could have ever received to even have been thought of to be even close to in that league as Chris. So Chris also saw me as my family was growing and the continued challenges of balancing career and family life. And it was by her example that I really realized the critical importance of striking that balance, and that doing it all was not what was going to create personal and long-lasting fulfillment. And I think probably some of you know the story, and I hope I don't butcher this too much, Chris, of I think probably one of the pivotal moments for you to really make the decision to take some time away from clinical practice and be with your family. But from what I understand, At the time, Chris and Bill, you had your practice together in the community. And it was a usual busy day, and the waiting room was full, and I'm sure you were very behind schedule. And the emergency room called, and at that time, the emergency room was not staffed by emergency room physicians, so each and every provider in the community was responsible for coming and seeing their patients at the hospital when they came and admitting them and doing all that was necessary. So she's there, she's busy, she's behind schedule, the emergency room calls, and there's a patient there that needs to be assessed and seen. And then the school called and said that one of the kids was sick. I can't imagine it. I just can't imagine being in that situation. And from what I gather, that was one of the final straws that broke the camel's back, that made you decide to take some time away and dedicate some time to an even more important role. What's that?
I took 4 years.
4 years off. To the even more important role of being a mother to your children, and I have always admired you for that decision. As many of you also know, Chris has a very lighthearted and endearing quality about her. And we would frequently have our morning quality checks before we would see patients. And it was not uncommon for me to find a stray hair clip or a slip hanging low. And Chris would simply laugh and fix it and go about her day with positive grace like she always did. And she always made sure that we didn't stand too close to the microwave or that we didn't work too late. And she always took an interest in how we were doing, both personally and professionally. So as you can see by the variety of people in this room, Chris not only contributed to the medical community, but to so many other parts of our community. And her constant passion for giving back and creating a difference will leave a mark here for many years to come. And Chris, you have raised the bar here, not only for medical care, but as a human being. And I know that I would not be the physician, I would not be the mother or the person that I am without having had you in my life. So I, and I think we, are so grateful for you. Thank you.
I first met Bill in 1994. I was in my fellowship. I had talked to Bill a few times in the last couple of years with patients that we had shared. At that time, we actually picked up the phone and called other doctors and had a discussion. We didn't just send an email or a text and say, this patient is doing this and this patient is doing that. And so I had the opportunity to call Bill one time and asked him if he was looking for a business partner, and he said, come on up. And I think it was in January, as I recall. And I was struck when I first met Bill. Here he was in January, and he was wearing Birkenstocks. Socks, of course. And I subsequently learned that Bill had actually 2 pairs of work shoes. He had Birkenstocks and snow boots. I'm 100% convinced that if Bill could have figured out how to wear Birkenstocks in the snow and kept his feet dry, the snow boots would never have come out of the closet. About 6 months after that, Bill and I developed a business partnership, and we formed Bill continued to develop the Cancer Center. We moved into Building 3 in, I think it was October of 1994. And Bill continued to develop the cancer program such that the American College of Surgeons certification was, I think, in either 1996 or 1997. This was a vision that I had no idea regarding its importance. It's a nationally recognized certification that really is, it really signifies the quality of a community cancer center. And we had the certification of a comprehensive community cancer center. That certification has continued, every year until now. As you may have heard just a minute ago, we are now part of Dignity Health, and the other hospitals in Dignity Health, we have two of them that have also developed this or acquired this certification. There's Mercy San Juan and Mercy General, but they've only had their certifications for a few years. We're the shining star in the Sacramento Dignity Health Cancer Center program. They have come to us recently and asked us, would we be interested in merging our cancer centers with those two cancer centers to form a more regional cancer center to increase the notoriety of our cancer program and also to access more services for our cancer patients. This is all because of you, Bill. This would not have existed without Bill Newsom. You may not realize how dedicated Bill Newsom is. Let me give you an example. One day, it was on a Thursday, and we had a tumor board, and Bill Newsom really wanted to go to this tumor board because we had a visiting professor. This professor was well known in the community of oncology, and he was going to give a lecture on something. Well, Bill had a screening colonoscopy scheduled that morning. And as you can imagine, what we do with screening colonoscopies is those people get sedated. Well, the day's done. You can't do anything. Bill really wanted to go to this conference, however, and it was at 12:30, and his colonoscopy was in the morning. He's the only person I've ever met that chose to have his screening colonoscopy without any sedation. I'm pretty sure that was the last time he had that done without any sedation, though. Bill Newsom left his practice just before the mandated electronic medical records in the office. Do you remember those? Handwritten notes, typed notes, dictaphones. Those were the days. As I see the charts coming, the records coming across my desk, faxed over. Now, these are electronic medical records, by the way. This is to save, what, trees? I think we've killed a lot more trees with the electronic medical records than we did beforehand. But I routinely see 20-page follow-up notes faxed to me by physicians with their electronic medical records. To try to glean anything that's meaningful out of those notes is ridiculous. Every now and then I see a patient who has previously been to the office, and I pull out old records. Bill's notes were the best. Bill, in a small paragraph, was able to say more informative information than most people could say in a whole page, including me, obviously. And so when I see Bill's patients and I review Bill's old records, everything's there. The pertinent positives, the pertinent negatives, the impression, the plan, it's all there and it's all just right. And Bill, over 18 years, you were my mentor, you're my friend. I'm absolutely positive that I would not be anywhere near the physician that I am now without you being there, helping me along the way. Thanks a lot, Bill.
I'm honored to be able to be here to present the awards to you. I'd like to shed a little light on just two stories that illustrate perhaps a different perspective of their lives, just from the past history. And first, I'd like to talk about Bill as a father. And this goes back to when Scott Kellerman and some other people, perhaps 35 years ago, started something called the Western County Medical Society, I believe it was. And when I first came to be on the medical staff 33 years ago, I was told about this group, and it was a very educational group. The purpose of it was obviously for the betterment of our knowledge as physicians, but what happened is we would take all our families and go to some place like Sun River in Oregon or Lake Tahoe or some ski place. And we would dedicate ourselves to learning for about 1 hour of the whole weekend. And one time, when we were in Kirkwood, all our families were there, and the Newsoms were there with their 3 kids. So we got up in the morning, and we before the evening session, of course, you had to get ready for it by skiing. So we were in line to go skiing, and Bill shows up with these 3 little kids. It was a very sunny day, and nobody had gloves, nobody had sunglasses, and nobody really had their hair combed, and he was trying to get them into the ski school. And we said, well, gosh, what happened? And he looked at us, he said, Chris has a stomach flu, and so I'm trying to take care of these kids. And so he was up there, so everybody contributed and kind of got them lined up, and we all threw in things and went and found their hats and their gloves and so forth. But I would just, and then I also remember when Emily, I'm sitting at Emily's table, when she was born, she was the most red-haired baby I'd ever seen. Everyone was coming to the nursery to see Emily. And then my other memory of Bill was 2 years ago perhaps, we went to a Music in the Mountains concert, and Joanna was there. And at that concert, she got up and grabbed her dad and just started dancing. And so I've had the privilege to see you as a dad through the whole spectrum of life, and I love that image. So I congratulate you as a parent. As a parent who's not married to a doctor, and that has been hard enough, and my husband has been so supportive, but he drinks a lot of wine. And then here are 2 doctors raising 3 children and being on call. I cannot imagine how you did it, but congratulations. I know your kids are going well. So the other perspective I'd like to give is of Christine, because I know she's a doctor and I know she's well respected and so forth, but she has this other life, and she's also a belly dancer, and she is a musician. And so I've had the privilege of seeing her. We recruited her for a benefit we did for the Care Crisis Nursery to get in a belly dancing costume. Now, Scott has been there as Bud Lightyear before, but she was actually very serious about this and practiced her routine, and she kept calling me saying, well, I think I got it down like this, and how are we going to do the music? And she just did such a wonderful job, so hopefully someday she'll be up here doing that next year when she's presenting the award. And then the other thing, that the hospital is a wonderful place to work, but it's gotten a little bit more regimented. And in the old days, we actually had a talent contest one time there, and in the parking lot before HIPAA and all the other things. And so all the employees and things were getting their acts together. So Chris and I were, I think, the only 2 women. There were 3 women on the staff, actually 4 at the time. So we decided we need a doctor's act. So it was Chris, myself, Elizabeth, whose name we can't remember, who was the pathologist, and Catherine Smith, I believe. Yeah. So we took this very seriously over gin and tonics at Elizabeth's house, and we wrote some wonderful lyrics and came up with these 2 songs as the Pointless Sisters.
And do you remember the one?
Yeah, do you want to sing it?
No, but
Good.
The title I really like.
Yeah, the title. Okay, you can say it.
I want a surgeon with a slow hand.
I want a surgeon with a slow hand. And the other one was,
I'm forgetting.
You've lost this gloving feeling. So, anyway, so I happen to have, I think, the video of this.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Which I did not. I'll explain this later. No, I'm not going to show it. No, I don't have a VCR. So this is my award to you. Okay. Am I supposed to do something else? Okay. So I really don't have my glasses, but I'm very proud to present the Celebrating Leadership in Healthcare Award to Drs. Christine and Bill Newsom for their commitment to the community, thank you, apologist. Okay. For their commitment to the community, dedication to health care, and never-ending efforts to improve the lives of others in the region. Thank you so much.
Well, I give you a hand.
You guys are probably going to have to say something.
Wow. I'm pretty overwhelmed. It's hard to know what to say after those incredibly touching words from everyone. I do have a few comments prepared. It's a little bit of a change of gear. But Bill and I were both trying to think about the theme of leadership in healthcare, since that's what this award is about, and trying to decide what leadership in healthcare really means, how to define that. Anyway, first I want to thank everyone who came here tonight to support Western Sierra Medical Clinic's fundraiser, and especially for honoring Bill and me. So anyway, when gathering our thoughts about what leadership in healthcare actually means, it was really kind of hard to find a common theme because it's really a broad term. And this room is full of wonderful examples of healthcare leaders, and you all do very different things. Sometimes leadership consists of doing what we're trained to do in medical school or residency or nursing school. Sometimes it takes the form of playing roles we've learned later in our careers. The most challenging leadership role for me, but one that I feel can be vital for doctors and healthcare workers at times, is at that sometimes uncomfortable interface between health and society. It's sometimes easier and a lot more fun to just hang out with our patients, doing whatever we do in our specialty. I was first exposed to the notion that physicians had an important role in informing society about the possible medical outcomes of society's decisions when I encountered the group Physicians for Social Responsibility in the 1980s. We had recently moved up to Nevada County, and I went through a speaker's training about the medical effects of nuclear war, given by a young physician by the name of Dr. Sarah Warner. Where are you, Sarah? Remember that? From that time on, my sense of the social responsibility of physicians has evolved. With this in mind, I'll give you a couple of examples of what I believe leadership in healthcare can look like these days. We all know about the many long-term effects that global climate change is having on our environment. Healthcare workers are pointing out that climate change is also increasingly affecting our health. These threats include extreme weather events, like the 2003 European heat wave that killed 45,000 to 70,000 people, or the 2010 Russian heat wave, killing an estimated 56,000. And also cumulative effects such as the increased rate of asthma and respiratory disease due to higher levels of ozone and wildfire smoke. Rising temperatures and changes in precipitation have expanded the habitable areas for disease-carrying insects and other animals, leading to changing epidemiology of many vector-borne diseases. I won't go into the scores of other effects of global climate change, but you can imagine that the interaction of climate effects with food shortages, clean water, and loss of livable land may lead to challenges in health care like we have never faced before. So right now, the community needs healthcare leaders, among others, to bring some real-life lessons to this discussion. Here's another example of medical leadership. Now, this is going to take a little imagination. Imagine if a new virus had entered the US, killing 85 people daily, 7 of them children. Then imagine every few days there were an especially severe outbreak in one city or another where an extra 5 to 10 people died. Then suppose this disease was 20 times more common in our country than in any other developed nation. Now, how quickly do you think our whole society would mobilize to contain this disease and bring every means possible to stop this dreaded epidemic? Well, we have just such an epidemic going on right now. Over 30,000 people die yearly from firearms in the United States. And healthcare leaders have taken the lead in naming this a public health epidemic, as it truly is. And it requires a multi-pronged approach, as any epidemic would require, including, number 1, adequate care for the mentally ill, including mandatory treatment for the mentally ill who are in danger of violent behavior, now known as Laura's Law in California, as championed by the Wilcox family. Number 2, registration of all gun purchases and denial to mentally ill felons and committers of domestic violence. Number 3, education about gun safety in the home, which is actually forbidden to physicians in the state of Florida. You may ask parents about vaccinations and seatbelts, but if you inquire if they have guns in the home and whether they are kept locked up, that is considered an infringement of their rights, and you may not inquire about guns. And finally, well, not finally, but yes, our role as healthcare leaders also across the country, healthcare leaders have been asking for, and our most respected journals are also calling for, a ban on the sale to the public of military-type assault rifles, whose only purpose is to kill large numbers of humans. We will never entirely get rid of gun violence in our society, but just as with any epidemic that has ever been controlled, healthcare leaders can show that a multi-pronged approach, including the above elements, is essential to its control. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to my husband, Bill, to speak a little further about leadership, what he thinks leadership in healthcare might look like.
Well, thank you, Christine. First, I'd like to thank Western Sierra Medical Clinic for honoring us tonight, and thank all of you for your presence and for the donations that you've given to Western Sierra Medical Group for providing co-payments for chemotherapy drugs for cancer patients. It's close to my heart, and it's very important, so thank you all very much. I'd like to endorse everything that Christine has said. She and I have been married for 43 years, and I've learned that that's a good strategy. It's a little ironic that I'm sharing the honor of being recognized as a leader in healthcare, as I'm not a natural leader by any means. Christine, who knows about Enneagrams, says I'm personality type number 5, the observer. So I'll use this bully pulpit to make 2 observations about the state of medicine and cancer medicine in particular. I was blessed during my career of 40-odd years to see great progress in oncology. I really got into the field on the ground floor. And forgive me for reading this, I'm just a little overcome. When I applied for a fellowship in hematology at University of California, San Francisco in 1975, the program director said I was too late for a position that year, but that a new fellowship program was starting, something called medical oncology. And I could do that for a year and then do hematology as a combined program. President Nixon had declared the war on cancer in 1971, and it was the dawn of the era of chemotherapy for solid tumors. This brute force approach to cancer treatment produced a few dramatic successes, such as in the case of Hodgkin disease, and more modest improvements in the treatment of common cancers like breast and ovary cancer. The guiding principle was to use combinations of chemo drugs to kill the majority of cancer cells without killing the patient, and anticipating that chemosensitive normal cell populations could recover more rapidly from the effects of chemotherapy than the cancer cell populations, which typically lack functioning DNA repair mechanisms. Then the whole process could be repeated 4 to 6 times, hopefully destroying the last cancer cell. Well, over the years, with increasing understanding of the basic biological mechanisms of proliferation of cancer cells, new treatment approaches have come along, identifying and blocking the genetic pathways which drive cancer cell proliferation. The first dramatic example of this new treatment paradigm was the case of chronic myelogenous leukemia, where it was discovered that a single mutated gene caused unregulated proliferation of white cells, also known as leukemia. Armed with this knowledge, researchers targeted the culprit gene and succeeded in synthesizing a molecule that literally turned off the runaway gene. It was named STI 571, the 571st compound that they tried. It came on the market in 2003 as Gleevec and fundamentally changed the direction of cancer treatment. This last week's New England Journal of Medicine, and that's the premier general medical journal we look at, had 15 advertisements for new drugs. 11 of the 15 were for targeted molecular agents for cancer, and all were new since I retired in 2012. This is, of course, great news, but there's unfortunately some bad news as well. Gleevec came to market 13 years ago, costing about $20,000 a year. A ton of money, especially for a medication you need to take indefinitely. Today, however, the cost has skyrocketed to $106,000 a year, and all the new cancer drugs are in the same price range. Big Pharma is treating cancer as a goose that lays golden eggs. The cost of research and development needs to be factored into drug prices, but the economics of cancer medicine are clearly unsustainable, presenting a major problem for today's generation of healthcare leaders. Well, I'll close with a word about information technology, which is the elephant in the exam room of today's physician. The internet has been a useful tool in so many ways that it's hard to imagine practicing medicine without it. And for all its growing pains, the electronic medical record will be invaluable as well. But putting a computer screen between doctor and patient is not in all ways a good thing. As physicians, we're challenged to make full use of technology for our patients' benefit, but we mustn't become servants of technology. We can't forget that we are, first of all, healers. Our patients need compassion, as indeed we do. To remember this, to honor this, and to model this are the essence of leadership in medicine today. Thank you all very much.